Greetings, film fanatics. Filmholmes here, and welcome to another rendition of Too Many Movies. So in the last video, I talked about my all-time favorite dramatic film, Shawshank Redemption. The Shawshank Redemption, sorry. It's sometimes hard to remember that little the. But The Shawshank Redemption, my favorite dramatic film of all time. And it is my favorite movie of all time, and it's tied with what is my favorite comedy of all time. Because even though I love sci-fi, I love horror a little bit, or thrillers, you know, I love westerns, you know, there are a few different genres. I really love all of them. I want to experience everything when it comes to film, but comedy is my number one. Comedy is most important in my life. I love humor. I love studying humor. So comedic films, of course, are going to be the biggest thing to me. And my favorite comedic movie, even though I have probably 100 that I love, you know, there are so many great comedy movies. You know, Mel Brooks has made Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, you know, Airplane. You know, there's movies like Animal House and stuff like that, even like Porky's. You know, these groundbreaking comedies, Some Like It Hot, you know, a Billy Wilder classic. So many great comedies. The one that is my favorite, and it's not better than Blazing Saddles, which is my second favorite comedy of all time, or Airplane, which is my third, a very close third. It's not a better comedy than those, and it's not groundbreaking like those two were. But there is just something about this movie, and fuck it, I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. My favorite comedic film of all time that I'm going to talk about today is Arthur. Not the fucking Russell Brand remake. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. I've never seen it. I don't want to see it. Unless I somehow get 100,000 subscribers on this channel, and you all beg me to finally watch it so I can rip it a new asshole, I'll do it then. But until then, I'm sticking with the original Arthur. So yes, Arthur, starring Dudley Moore, Liza Minnelli, and John Gielgud. Arthur. Now, if you really don't know about this movie, let me tell you the plot. Arthur Bach is a spoiled, bratty, almost billionaire who's probably like 30-something, mid-30s, and he's an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic because he's unhappy. He has all this money, but he doesn't have what everyone craves the most, love. So in the opening scene, we find out how funny Arthur is when he's drunk. He's hilarious with the one-liners. There's one thing what does he say? He goes, "Well, how's my hat?" And the the hooker that he picked up to spend the night with him in the limousine says, "You weren't wearing a hat, or you took your hat off." And he goes, "Ah, I hate it when that happens." It's not funny when I do it, but it's hilarious in context, I promise. And that's only one line out of the 40 billion that Arthur Bach has in the movie. But he's being pushed into an arranged marriage by his father and another man. They're trying to get the families united. It's never really explained why it's so important. I mean, it's a business thing. It's not important. We don't like Susan, the woman Arthur is forced to marry. She is just... She doesn't do anything wrong. She's not a bad guy. She's not a villain. It's just, you can tell Arthur loathes her. Just, she's boring, and she's just real uptight, and she's got a silver spoon up her butt. And Arthur's more fun. You know, not just as an alcoholic, he's just more fun. But things get very complicated when the father says, if you do not marry Susan, you will not inherit your $750 million, however much it is. So Arthur agrees, but he falls in love with a nobody, played by Liza Minnelli. Just a nobody, Linda. She is a struggling actress who also has to be a waitress who takes care of her father who can't get a job. You know, real world problems, the complete opposite of Arthur. And that's the story. You know, that is the story, this love story between Arthur and Linda, and him trying to figure out what's more important, love or money. So, Steve Gordon directed and wrote this. Unfortunately, he died a couple years after this movie came out. He would have had a brilliant career in Hollywood, but this script is one of the best comedic scripts ever, but there also was a lot of ad-libbing, which back then, I think even in the 80s, wasn't done a whole lot. But Dudley Moore, who plays Arthur, he won a Golden Globe for this and was nominated for an Oscar. And it's one of the greatest comedic roles and greatest comedic film performances you will ever see in your life, because it's like a split personality. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. When he's drunk, he's hilarious and funny, and he never gets annoying, even when he's really drunk. It's not a stereotypical drunk. He's a functioning alcoholic. He really is. But he's fucking hilarious, and the best comedy from this movie comes from him being a drunk. But when he's sober, he's charming. I mean, fucking charming. He will charm the shit out of you. He will charm you out of your pants. He basically was playing Dudley Moore. From what I've seen, he was a very charming man, and he married and dated very beautiful women from Hollywood, even though he was like this tall. But it didn't matter, because he was just, he's very intelligent, and Arthur is very intelligent. He just is unhappy, so he drinks. It's his vice. And we can relate to that as an audience. That even though we can't really relate to him as a almost billionaire, we get how money isn't the be-all, end-all. It doesn't give you complete happiness. It's wonderful to have it, not have to worry about money, but it's not as important as family and love and building a life with somebody. Or so I've been told. And, Dudley Moore plays it. He could have crossed that line to where as a drunk he was too annoying, or as sober he was a dick. And we love both sides, and we love Arthur Bach. We love him. He is a fuck-up, but we get why he's a fuck-up, and we want to see him gain redemption. We want to see him get everything he wants. But the person that seals the show is John motherfucking Gielgud. He won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and I believe the Golden Globe as well. And again, it's one of the best supporting comedic roles you will ever see, comedic performances ever. He plays Arthur's butler. He's basically his father in this. Arthur has a real father, but he hates him. And his father's not really too high on Arthur as well. And John Gielgud, it's so hard to... He plays the straight man, but he has some of the best lines. Even during filming, he was like, "Am I being funny?" And Steve Gordon was like, "Yes, John, you are hilarious." And he is. He really is. It's hard to say he's the best part of this movie, but he is. He steals the fucking movie. Even from Dudley Moore, who is doing an incredible job. And the whole cast is just wonderful. Even the little supporting characters like Linda's husband, played by the guy who... Linda's father, played by the guy who played Jerry Seinfeld's father on Seinfeld. Wonderful actor. Barney something, I believe. Wonderful actor. Very, very funny. Even though he's not in this much, he's very, very good. But John Gielgud, I'll give you an example. Arthur, after a night of drinking, he's sober. He wakes up, he's reading on a newspaper on his gigantic throne with a top hat, because it's Arthur Bach. And Gielgud, is reading a newspaper as well, and Arthur goes, "Hobson?" And that's the name of John Gielgud's character, and he goes, "Yes." He goes, "I'm going to take a bath." And John Gielgud just goes, "I'll alert the media." Out of context, it's probably not as funny, but it is. He struggles with who Arthur is, because you can tell he loves Arthur like a son. As a butler, he never got married, he never had kids. Arthur is his child, and he loves Arthur like a son, and he's a father figure to him. It's the only father figure Arthur has, and he's raised him his whole life, or at least close to it. And when Arthur fucks up, he's disappointed, but he doesn't scold him exactly. He does sometimes eventually, but it's never over the top. It's obvious, he wants Arthur to grow up and to not have this problem with drinking, and wants to find someone he can love, or at least keep all that money so he can die an alcoholic. He says, it's a really well-written line where he says, "Arthur, alcoholics don't usually die with lots of money. They die in a gutter." It's not what he said, I'm paraphrasing, but it's a great line because that's true. Arthur is never going to drink his money away. He'd be dead in an hour. But, he doesn't care. He drinks because he's unhappy because of the money, but he wants the money at the same time. It's, first world problems, am I right? But John Gielgud, he earned that Oscar. It's probably the performance he's most well known for, but he was an actor who had many credits to his name. Many. But this is still my favorite performance of his, because he is so fucking just hilarious in every scene he is, and he steals every damn scene. And without him, the movie wouldn't have been nearly as good. That's how much. It's kind of like Heath Ledger in Dark Knight. You know, John Gielgud is the Joker in this, if that makes sense. Without him, this movie would not have been nearly as good. And then there's Liza Minnelli, who plays Linda. She isn't a weak character. It's just, I think people were like, oh, Liza Minnelli was in that. That's right. And I remember my friends were really, really unhappy, not with her performance. She does a great job with the character, and you truly believe her and Arthur are in love. It's kind of like a 3-day romance, almost like a Disney movie. But you believe that her and Arthur are really in love, and you are desperate for them to get together, to get everything they want and deserve. So she was perfectly cast. But a lot of my friends who watch this movie, they're like, that was a great movie, you were right. But why Liza Minnelli? Why couldn't they have got someone prettier? And I don't think Liza Minnelli is unattractive at all. I see what they're saying, but to me, I like that better. Because the woman Arthur's supposed to marry, Susan, she's not the most gorgeous thing in the world, but she's probably prettier than Liza Minnelli. She's blonde, skinnier, you know. I like the fact that Arthur, he fell for a real woman, a woman that has shape in her body, that maybe doesn't have the prettiest face in the world. He fell in love with her because he just fucking fell in love with her. It's his soulmate. It's his love. So, you know, I like that. To me, it was perfect casting, so I didn't have a problem with it, but some of you might if you've never seen it. But the whole story is basically about, you know, what's going to happen with Arthur and his money and his love life, and it ends in spectacular fashion. I'll go ahead and say at the wedding of Arthur and Susan. Of course, it's almost like a sitcom. And there's too many brilliant scenes to talk about. My favorite, and I think the one that's become the most famous, is the moose scene. Arthur goes to Susan's house, or her father's house. She still lives with them. It wasn't really said. He's drunk off his ass, and even drove there while drinking, because it was the early 80s, and fuck it, it was still funny. And he's drunk off his ass, and he has to talk to her father. He's going to propose to Susan eventually. Again, not a spoiler, I promise. But there's this moose head on the wall that the father obviously killed. And Arthur is just fixated on this. He enters the room and he just looks at the moose and goes, oh, this must be awfully embarrassing for you. And most of the scene is focused on that, but it's so much comedy in one scene. But what I really love about it is that Dudley Moore ad-libbed all this shit. I don't think in the script there was anything about the fucking moose head. It was just there because of props. And apparently, according to Steve Gordon, like, they could have made a movie out of him just ad-libbing or doing improv for a couple hours. That could have been a movie in itself, and God, I wish they would release that footage, or at least a little bit of it. I would love that. But that's probably become the most famous scene. It's my favorite scene in the movie. I piss my pants laughing every time, but I piss my pants laughing throughout the entire movie. Now, and I'll go ahead and say, the writing is perfect, the direction is very, very good. You know, it's a comedy, it's not really needed to look super pretty, but what I like about this movie, the way it's shot, it feels like the 80s. And it's not a nostalgia piece. I mean, this movie could be remade in any time period. It should never be remade again. That's why this movie's a classic, because it is the movie it's supposed to be. A remake is not going to pull that off. But I like how it really feels like the 80s. I like movies that do that. Another one that I'll talk about another day is Tootsie, one of my other favorite comedies. It feels like the 80s, like the early, mid-80s. And there's nothing to do with the movie. I just like movies that do that. It is a time capsule without trying to be one. It's not trying to be Back to the Future. And in a time capsule, put 85 and 55. You know, but the direction is very good. The acting is pitch perfect. Everybody, even the little side characters, do a fantastic job. Even Susan, her father, are great to watch. A lot of fun. You know, there's really no bad guy in this either. There's no villain. You know, Susan's father is a dick, but he's trying to do what's best for his daughter, I guess. He's just kind of an asshole, and so is Arthur's father. No idea what happened to Arthur's mother. It's my only complaint about the movie. They don't mention what happened to his mother. And in the remake, they have, I don't know if his mother's trying to get him married, but they changed Hobson to a woman, Helen Mirren, which is great, but that is completely against the idea of the first fucking movie, but they were trying to be different, I guess. But I don't know what happened to Arthur's mother. They never mention her. I just would like to know as a fan, but it doesn't matter. But everything about this movie, the music, the other Oscar it won was for Best Original Song, The Best That You Can Do. It's on my phone, you know, wonderful song, maybe a little dated, but it's a beautiful song. I highly recommend it. It was Burt Bacharach, and I can't remember who sang it, but look it up, you know, buy it, watch the movie first. But all of that is just gold. But why is this my favorite comedic movie? As I said about my favorite dramatic movie, Shawshank Redemption, every time I watch it, it's almost like the first time I ever watched it. I could watch it any day of the week, you know, any hour of any day, any time of the year, and it's like I'm watching it for the first time and I'm enthralled. Arthur is like that for me too. Except, as much as I still laugh at Blazing Saddles, or Tootsie, or Airplane, or 40-Year-Old Virgin, all these other comedies that I love, Arthur is still the only one that, even when I'm watching it by myself, I laugh. I laugh, and it's not just like, huh, huh, like respectful laughter. I fucking laugh. I laugh until I'm red in the face. And that's not easy to do when you've seen a movie probably 50 times in your life, to where every time you still laugh your ass off, even when I'm alone. That's why it's my favorite comedy. And I don't think it gets the respect it deserves. The only good thing about the remake is that I think it somewhat got more attention for the first Arthur, the original Arthur movie, and that's a good thing. But I don't think this movie gets the respect it deserves. Like, it's not a groundbreaking piece of comedic work in the film industry in terms of, like, it changed anything. Except it's probably the only movie where it made alcoholism really funny. After that, it wasn't so much funny. But it's still like top 30, I think, on lists of best comedies, but it is that funny. The pacing, the timing of the jokes, and the comedy is just perfect. The editing is superb. And I really just want this movie to get the respect it deserves. I want it to climb the best comedies list, because it's my number one. If it wasn't, it'd still be in my top 3, because it is that damn good. And it's just beautiful to watch and laugh at. So again, obvious like Shawshank Redemption, Arthur, 5 out of 5. And it's not a perfect movie. I know, again, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. I need to stop saying that. But please, if you haven't watched the original Arthur, please go and see it. And if you've only seen the remake, do yourself a favor, because you probably didn't like it. Go and see the original. It needs to get a bigger fan base. You know, Dudley Moore is no longer with us. Of course, John Gielgud isn't. The majority of people in the film are long gone. And they should be remembered and talked about, even if it's just for this one movie. And all of them have other credentials. But this movie should be remembered for all time and should never be remade again. But my favorite comedy movie of all time, Arthur, I love it. I love it so much. Please watch it. Make the fan base bigger. But there is a problem. I'm showing you the DVD, and I do have the Blu-ray. It wasn't that it was expensive. I put off getting the Blu-ray for a very, very long time. And it is better quality, better sound, all that good shit that Blu-ray gives you. The problem is, there's a sequel. And I haven't mentioned it till now. Arthur 2, On the Rocks. Ha! He's an alcoholic. On the Rocks. Brilliant. Now look, obviously this was not written by Steve Gordon. He had already passed away of a heart attack. This was a cash grab. It was made way too many years after the original, because the original was a big hit. It almost made $100 million at the box office. For early 80s, that's fucking huge. So it wasn't like a little hit that got a few Academy Award nominations. It was huge. Arthur 2, I've only seen one time in my life. And it sucks. Dudley, the whole cast came out and said how the movie sucked. And they basically did it for a goddamn paycheck. And I don't blame them. And it was panned when it came out and quickly forgotten. But why? Why do you have to put Arthur 2 with one of the best comedies ever made. Oh, because if you didn't, you wouldn't sell any fucking copies. I'll go ahead and say this. If enough people watch this video and say, you want me to watch Arthur 2 on the Rocks so I can do a Too Many Movies about it, I will gladly do it, because I would love to fucking rip into it, but I am not going to watch it unless enough people ask, because it is that bad, and it is a complete slap in the face to the original Arthur, much more than the remake was. At least the remake kind of tried. The sequel, I don't think any effort was put into it, which I didn't think was possible, but they pulled it off. But again, I love Arthur. I love the movie. I can watch it any day of the week, laugh my ass off, laugh until my stomach hurts, and always be happy that I did. You know, and that's really tough to find when it comes to films. So please give it a watch if you never have. Spread the word, please. I am Filmholmes. This was Too Many Movies. This is my film collection. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Later.